Mercedes just fired up their 2026 engine, and it's so powerful, it triggered an emergency meeting at FIA headquarters. Leaked data shows this engine could be the most powerful hybrid unit F1 has ever seen, and it's got the FIA terrified. Is Mercedes about to break F1 again like they did in 2014? If this engine hits the grid, the rest of the paddock might not stand a chance. Hit that subscribe button right now so you don't miss the full story, because what we're about to show you will change how you see 2026. What began as a quiet postseason engine test has now exploded into a full-blown political and technical crisis at the heart of Formula One. McLaren's decision to fire up the 2026 spec Mercedes power unit behind closed doors has set off alarms inside the FIA. But what really pushed the panic button? According to multiple internal sources, it wasn't just the raw numbers coming out of the dyno, it was the way those numbers were achieved. The internal combustion unit combined with the electric deployment mode showed such seamless integration that regulatory officials fear a repeat of the domination Mercedes engineered in the hybrid era's early days. Behind the scenes, data packets submitted to the FIA for transparency requirements included indicators of energy recovery rates and deployment curves that eclipsed anything seen in the last 2 seasons. While other teams are still struggling with packaging and weight distribution under the new 2026 rules, Mercedes' early test at McLaren's Woking base reportedly achieved thermal efficiency gains and cooling breakthroughs that the governing body hadn't anticipated. It's not just that they're ahead, it's that they've jumped categories. McLaren, acting as both testbed and strategic partner, was caught in the middle of a storm. The FIA demanded full telemetry, including energy flow mapping during simulated race stints. Sources close to the situation revealed that FIA engineers noted anomalous consistency in the engine's electric assist, especially in high downforce, low-speed scenarios. This wasn't just a good engine, it was performing like a piece of precision engineering that had bypassed the current development curve altogether. Now, the political fallout is coming fast. Ferrari and Alpine have already filed formal complaints demanding clarification on several aspects of Mercedes' prototype PU. There's growing tension about whether Mercedes' design philosophy, particularly in battery cooling and MGUK deployment, is exploiting gray areas that could be closed once the 2026 technical directive is finalized. In an emergency FIA meeting earlier this week, insiders confirmed that a contingency clause was invoked to investigate whether any elements of the test violated the spirit of the future regulations. All of this comes as the FIA faces growing criticism about its preparedness for 2026. The regulatory overhaul was meant to promote competition, reduce costs, and bring sustainability to the forefront. But if one manufacturer already appears miles ahead, the rest of the grid could be boxed into reactive development strategies, something that cost teams dearly in the past. Many still remember the years 2014 through 2016 when Mercedes' power unit advantage was so great, overtaking them was almost impossible unless something went wrong mechanically. For McLaren, the political heat is intensifying. While they're not the architects of the engine, they are the first team to apply it on track under realistic testing conditions. That means every sector time, every energy deployment pulse, and every cooling solution becomes a case study for the rest of the grid and a pressure point for the FIA. The test that was supposed to give McLaren a quiet head start might now force them into weeks of scrutiny and compliance hearings before they can even turn another lap. And finally, the biggest question: if Mercedes really has unlocked a performance ceiling no one else anticipated, will the FIA move to contain it? Or will history repeat itself with another era of silver arrow supremacy? This is only the beginning, and what happens next could decide the power dynamics of Formula One's next generation. It all started with one internal document. A routine post-test report sent from McLaren to the FIA, outlining baseline performance figures from the Mercedes 2026 prototype engine. But buried in the technical jargon was something that set off immediate red flags: energy deployment efficiency that broke current simulation models. The test data didn't just suggest Mercedes was ahead, it suggested they were operating in a zone previously thought to be unreachable under the new fuel and battery constraints. The document showed peak hybrid deployment across an entire lap without a single thermal drop-off, and that's where FIA analysts began to panic. Under the 2026 regulations, power units are designed to rely more heavily on electric power, with limitations on energy storage, deployment timing, and fuel usage. Mercedes data implied they had found a way to extract consistent lap-after-lap electric performance without breaching thermal limits. That would mean fewer compromises in downforce settings, tire wear, and race strategy. When FIA tech officers attempted to simulate the same performance profile using current models, their systems flagged the result as non-compliant with expected power output decay. That triggered the first layer of internal meetings, and that's when McLaren was contacted for a deeper breakdown of their in-house telemetry. What they handed over next didn't help settle any nerves. Instead, it made things worse. The internal combustion engine had been paired with an MGUK configuration that appeared unnaturally synchronized with the car's traction control systems. This was no longer about raw engine power. The FIA began to suspect that Mercedes had achieved an extremely advanced integration between power delivery and chassis behavior, something only possible through deep coordination between PU mapping and vehicle dynamic simulations. In other words, the engine wasn't just strong. It was smart, adjusting output in real time to maintain maximum efficiency and balance. This threw the FIA's technical roadmap into chaos. If this was what Mercedes could achieve in an early test environment, what would it look like by mid-2025 when the rest of the grid would just be reaching prototype testing? The FIA had designed the 2026 rules to level the playing field, but it now appeared that one team may have out-engineered the intention of the rules entirely without even breaking them outright. And then came the political storm. A whistleblower from within one of the rival teams leaked internal concerns to a German motorsport outlet, triggering a cascade of media pressure on the FIA. Headlines screamed, "Mercedes exposes 2026 weakness," while paddock rumors grew louder. Did Toto Wolff find the loophole that everyone else missed? Was this another era-defining development coup, just like the split-turbo layout in 2014? By the time the FIA called its emergency engineering summit, it was no longer a question of what happened, it was how do we stop this before it becomes another Mercedes decade. The shockwaves from this test haven't just rattled technical departments. They've shaken the sport to its core. The moment whispers of Mercedes' 2026 power unit performance started echoing through the paddock, teams hit the alarm. Ferrari, Red Bull, and Alpine each held internal reviews of their own engine programs, desperately looking for signs they had missed anything that could explain Mercedes' head start. At Ferrari, one insider said the mood was grim, as engineers realized their simulations didn't even account for the efficiency levels Mercedes was demonstrating in real-world testing. Red Bull was more aggressive. Christian Horner reportedly requested an urgent debrief with technical director Pierre Wache and Honda representatives. Their primary concern? That Mercedes had effectively created a pseudo-active hybrid system, a way to regulate electric boost deployment with such precision that it mirrors the advantages of band active suspension. If true, this would mean Mercedes can maximize traction and corner exit performance like no one else on the grid. Alpine, meanwhile, are said to be blindsided. As one senior technical manager put it, "We thought the game was still in the lab. They're already on track." Their PU department in Viry-Châtillon has reportedly requested access to the FIA's benchmarking documents to better understand where the gaps lie. But even with that information, it may be too late to pivot engine architecture with under 12 months until homologation locks in. Teams are also pushing the FIA to clarify where the line stands between legal innovation and regulatory manipulation. While Mercedes hasn't broken any rules, they've likely exploited areas the FIA didn't fully tighten, particularly in cooling allowances and electric storage cycling. It's a classic case of spirit versus letter of the law. And as we've seen in the past, that fine line is where championships are won or lost. Off the track, strategic alliances are shifting. Some teams are reportedly exploring data-sharing collaborations, unofficial technical partnerships to try and catch up by comparing power unit telemetry anonymously. There's even talk that teams may collectively pressure the FIA to introduce a mid-cycle clarification or limiter to bring engine performance within a tighter window before the first 2026 race. McLaren, despite being at the center of the storm, has remained officially silent. But internally, sources say there's tension between the engineering department, excited about what they've seen, and team management, who are worried about potential political backlash. The last thing McLaren wants is to be seen as a pawn in a Mercedes master plan, especially after finally rebuilding credibility as a top contender. And in all of this chaos, one thing is now crystal clear to every team principal on the grid: the 2026 battle has already begun, not on the track, but in the test benches, the CFD labs, and the FIA briefing rooms. And as of today, Mercedes holds the high ground.